Hello children, in today's session we would discuss creative writing. What is creative writing, children? Actually, creative writing is an art. Creative writing doesn't only deal with factual information. We don't include only factual information, but there is a great deal of imaginary aspects. So there is an element of vivid imagination. We need to be original and self expressive. Creative writing piece evokes emotions, entertains, and is used to share human experiences. Flexibility is an important component of any creative writing piece because there is no set rule or set pattern for creative writing. It has to be descriptive. Creative writing combines the talent of writer with the elements of observation and analysis in an artistic portrayal of human conditions. Let's discuss the different forms of creative writing. First is speeches. Speeches also are a form of creative expression because they need to use just the right words and language for connecting with the audience. Our PM Narendra Modi is a good orator, and his speeches make an instant connect with the masses. Movie and television scripts are also a form of creative writing. The characters, setting, and storyline were imaginative and fictional. You may see the still of this movie, sci-fi movie Avatar, and the unbelievable 3D graphics, dialogue, and script made it a blockbuster film. Other forms of creative writing are poetry, plays, fiction, songs, memoirs, personal essays, and copywriting for advertisements. So, children, advertisements need to be catchy and attractive so that it could arrest the people's attention. Let's see what makes a good creative writer. So, to be a writer, the prerequisite is that one should be a reader. We have to read and read a lot to be a good writer. We need to practice the craft of writing. So, we need to find out time for ourselves daily to practice writing, and write a small piece every day would certainly help us to polish our writing skills. The unique idea. So, a person has to be capable of coming up with a unique idea because a creative writer has to be an out of the box thinker. He has to think something unusual. A creative writer should have rich vocabulary and should use the right words. Good creative writers have a love for words. They use words effectively, whether they are bringing story to life and transporting into another world, or trying to convince them to use a different brand of soap. Creative writers should know his or her audience and therefore write in a way which would captivate the minds of the reader. So, children, as a creative writer, we need to show and we don't need to tell our readers. For example, we can show being nervous by writing butterflies in your stomach, heart pounding out of your chest, big lumps in your throat, knees are wobbly like jelly, twirling hair with your finger, sweaty palms or hands, fidgeting with hands or clothing, stumbling over words. So it's very important for a writer to paint a picture and show his or her audience. So we need to show, not tell, to arrest the audience attention. Let's look up at an example. I heard footsteps creeping behind me and it made the whole situation scarier. Let's see how this has been rewritten. Crunching hit my ears from behind, accelerating the already rampant pounding of my heart. So in the second option, uh, the writer has written in a way which is far more descriptive and presents an imaginative picture. So children, let me connect this with a 20-second short video from the landmark blockbuster film Shollay. See how the background music and sound of Gabbar's footsteps express the fearful character of Gabbar.
कितने आदमी थे? सरदार, दो आदमी।
Now let's look at the other example. She was my best friend. I could tell her almost anything. Instead of telling your readers that she is your best friend, you may rewrite it differently. I met her at the town square, running in for our usual hug, and that carried on for far too long as we gushed about our lives with smiles lighting our faces. So, in this option, the writer actually shows how close you are to your friend. So, here is another example where the writer just tells, I would have stayed on the pier, meaning platform, forever if I could have. So here the writer actually shows the entire scenery from the platform. I melted into the beach at the end of the pier, watching the sun wink through treetops as it relinquished itself to night, my breath flowing fluidly once again. So here are a few more tips on creative writing. We should use precise words for creating perfect picture. The difference between the precise word and one that comes close is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. This is a quotation by Mark Twain, and this tells us that there is a great difference when we use the apt word and a word closer to that word. And for any creative writing piece, we should zero in on just the right word. Let's look up at the example given here. The trees bunched together, casting deep shadows over the lonely trail. So here, children, we need to be specific. Well, there are 1,000 kinds of trees. Do you mean pines? Then say pines. Or did you mean coconut palms? Or willows? Or eucalyptus? Each type of tree creates a very different image, and therefore the words should be specific while writing. Sometimes a pronoun is used by writers, but it is better to use a noun when there are 3 or 4 characters and a reader may get confused that for whom the pronoun stands for. Another tip for budding creative writers is we should use strong verbs to make writing power packed. So she ran quickly. The better way could be she sprinted. She spoke slowly. The better way may be he drawled. The dog barked angrily. The better way may be the dog gnashed its teeth. We may use scream instead of shouted loudly. So you may have seen that all these adverbs quickly, slowly, angrily, loudly, which accompanied the verb, actually got replaced by a power packed or an action verb. You may have a look at this strong verb list. Look at this grab. This particular word could have could be used could be replaced with these: snatch, clasp, grasp, nab, seize, snag, grip, take, clutch, pluck, whichever word suits the situation well. Then let's have a look at the verb run. So here we may use other words like sprint, rush, charge, scramble, bound, race, dash, dart. So like he darted his way to the office. He rushed to the office. So these are more power-packed words. So children, kill the adverbs wherever necessary. So let's first read an excerpt. Bella ran quickly down the hall. The lights were out and the storm raged angrily outside. Matt! She shouted loudly over the din. Matt! A flash of lightning lit up the hall. Bella froze, breath catching in her throat. She could have sworn. She looked furtively down the passage. There, in the shadows, someone moved. And it wasn't Matt. So in this excerpt, there are adverbs used, for example, quickly, angrily, loudly, furtively. So we may rewrite this excerpt without these adverbs and using power-packed verbs or a stronger verbs. So let's read this the another excerpt in which a stronger verb has been used instead of adverb. Bella sprinted down the hall. The lights were out and the storm raged outside. Matt! She screamed over the din. Matt! A flash of lightning lit up the hall. Bella froze, breath catching in her throat. She could have sworn. She peered down the passage. There, in the shadows, someone moved, and it wasn't Matt. So here, the length of the excerpt has also been reduced, and now it makes for a more effective reading. A creative writer has to engage a reader's five senses for a gripping experience. Creative writing doesn't begin with the intellect, it begins in the senses. Without senses, it is impossible to create images and feelings and stories. Pure intelligence can convince a reader, argue with the and prove certain points, but it can't make a reader hear, see, and feel. In creative writing, images, stories, and feelings are both source and methodology. A writer needs to make images and crystallize them into words that will deliver a message through to the readers. So a creative writer has to make his or her readers see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. So these descriptions of a beach given below appeal to our sense of sight. The tiny pink shells in the white sand. The way the sea is the same blue as the sky, making it hard to tell where one ends and the other begins, how the rocks are still wet from high tide. Below are few more examples where other senses are influenced. The smell of caught fish from the fishing boat, in this our sense of smell. The faint taste of salt on the breeze, in this our sense of taste has been affected. The screeching herring gulls, sense of sound or auditory imagery. The slippery rock, sense of feel and touch, how the rock felt, the slippery rocks. So, in these examples, we can see how our five senses have been affected and stimulated. The first draft is not actually the best version. We need to revise, rewrite, and edit it. When you write well, revision becomes not a chore but the essence of the writing act itself. This is said by Brenda Miller, writer of Tell It Slant. The purpose of the first draft is not to write something complete but to get your ideas on paper. Whether you write poetry, fiction, personal essays, you should revise your work. Revision allows you to improve on an initial attempt. It gives you the opportunity to write the best possible poem, fiction, personal essay, and so forth. Approach your work with a critical eye. Take advice and input from others. Be ready to make substantial and sometimes painful revisions in the pursuit of great literature. So let's recapitulate what a good creative writing piece should possess. Content should be dramatic. There should be mystery, tension, surprise, and wonder for compelling the readers to continue to read. Rhythmic prose may also make the writing interesting. Read aloud to hear your writing's musical cadence. Create memorable characters. So the characters should be strong with goals, strengths, flaws, and personas so that they could remember the character well. Make each part effective. Be conscious about what you want each part to do. Deepen plot with subplot. How could other plot lines develop your main theme? Add dramatic content. Ask, how do this dialogue advance my story? Add immersive settings. Make place details and let it change over time. Include conflict. Include characters whose personalities, goals, and class are interesting. Write great beginnings. Introduce characters and scenarios very well in a very interesting manner. Give satisfying endings. How does the ending resolve primary conflicts? So, children, ending could be of many kinds. Explicit ending. In explicit ending, everything at the end falls in place. It may be sad or happy, and readers have all the reasons to believe it. Implicit ending are actually vague, and it depends on the reader to conclude the ending. Then there is a twist ending. Especially for suspense stories, we use these kind of twist endings. And then there is a cliffhanger ending in which the end of a particular piece of creative work is actually connected to the next creative work which would be coming. Let's take the example of the blockbuster film Bahubali: The Beginning. The film ended with a question: why did Katappa kill Bahubali? These, the ending was deliberately given to increase the curiosity of the audience, and the theme why Katappa Bahubali was marketed for a year. And we, as audience, waited anxiously to watch the second part of the film. And when the second part of the movie released, it became a super hit on the very first day, collecting rupees 50 crore at the box office. So, children, let us conclude the session. In the opening slide, we had the statement, writing is the painting of your voice. So, children, if you want to paint your voice, be a creative writer. Thank you and Jai Hind.